Hi, it's Penny here, and welcome to another video where I am trying the first chapter of the first book of every book series that I'm interested in reading. In this video, and actually the next one, I'm going to be doing book series where you, my viewers, or people in my comments have recommended books to me. I will say I've split this into two groups or two videos. I'm going to try and do the more fantasy ones in this one, and then in the next one I'll do the ones that seem like they might have at least some sci-fi elements, because I ended up with too many to do them in one video. Also, if you've recommended a book to me and it's not in either of these videos, I probably forgot to put it in these lists, but I probably have it floating around somewhere else. So as usual, I tried to get these books from the library. I only managed to get a couple, so we'll start with those ones. Firstly, I have the Black Jewels trilogy by Anne Bishop, and the first book is called Daughter of the Blood. I think somewhere along the way I read Written in Blood by Anne Bishop, and someone told me this series was a better series to start with. I'm also not going to look up who recommended any of these books, because I feel like if I remember specifically who it was, it makes me more feel like I need to say I like it even if I don't, and I want to be more honest about it. So I'm trying to separate it in my brain a little bit. So I am a little bit worried about this. I don't think I actually prioritized Written in Blood that highly either, but this one is a fantasy romance, which isn't necessarily my taste. It's also from 2007, which is iffy, but still I want to give it a go. It's something about this new witch queen has been born, and she's going to be really powerful enough to threaten the High Lord of Hell, but then there's going to be these other people who are trying to influence her and use her for their own means. So I will read the first chapter of that and let you know what I think. Okay, so I read the first chapter of Daughter of the Blood. Firstly, I should also say, for most of these books, I'm trying to try the audiobook for at least a little bit to see whether that's an option for these. As far as I can tell, the series does not have an audiobook, which is often the case with older fantasy books or older books in general. Another thing I should mention is somehow I did not realize there's a dragon on the cover of this book. I don't know how I missed that. That does make me more interested, even though there was no hint of a dragon in the first chapter. So the first chapter, actually I read the prologue first. The prologue is kind of this woman giving a prophecy. It seems like, my hair is annoying, it seems like the people who are ruling are of the blood, but the more evil people who have the blood, whatever that is, have kind of gotten themselves in charge. Isn't that always the way? And this woman is giving a prophecy of things changing, of this young child being born with a lot of power that's going to change things. And when she's telling this prophecy, she's making sure these two particular brothers hear it, because she thinks they can use it to their advantage. And it seems like they're going to be the good guys. So the first chapter, we're following one of these guys. Now, he's some kind of non-human race. Well, he's still human, but he has wings. And this is where I definitely was getting Sarah J. Maas vibes. And just the way that he was talking and thinking had me feeling that kind of way. And I kind of liked it. So basically this young child turns up. It seems like she's used the magic to hear him sending out some kind of psychic message to his brother. And she's been able to use the magic to travel. But the only way she could have done that is if she has the highest level of magic. Because your magic is aligned with some kind of colored jewel. And the darker it is, the more powerful you are. It was a very rushed explanation of it, so I would expect you would get a lot more explanation as we go along. But this guy and this child kind of form a nice relationship. He's like, you really need to be careful, at least till you're older. Maybe don't travel around like this, and she agrees. So I assume that the next time they meet up, she'll be older. At least 17, is that what he said? I can't remember. The other thing I wanted to say about this is the way the world building was being done reminded me a lot of Samantha Shannon, especially the Priory of the Orange Tree series. That's not a compliment, because I didn't love that series. It's just the kind of thing where it's throwing all these place names and character names at you, and you don't know which of these do I need to know, any of these important. It's just too much, and you're just being given all these names and no information, and you're like, what is happening? I hate that kind of world building. So from that perspective, it wasn't my favorite. It just I don't know, I get the feeling there could be some cool magical elements and plot points in this, but that a lot of the focus of the story wouldn't be exactly to my taste. That's my feeling for this. So anyway, what I normally do in these videos is I prioritize the books for this video. So for this video, we only have one so far. So it's at the top and the bottom. Then I also try to put it in my bigger priority. I also normally try to look at that in advance, but I have not done so today. So let me look. Where would I put this? You know, I think I'm going to put this in the maybe section, which interestingly is where I put Anne Bishop's other series. And to be honest, I think I'm going to put it under that other Anne Bishop series just because the other one, Written in Red, had a bit of a darker feel to it that I really enjoyed. Now, I don't know for sure that that's how the series are going to play out in reality. And also, way down here in the maybe, if I get to these, it won't be for a really long time. But I just like things to be a little bit darker. So I think I'm going to put it under that. I am still going to put it above Rocannon's World, which is kind of standing in for the Hainish cycle. I think at this point I've decided I'm just going to pick up certain books from the Hainish cycle because Rocannon's World I didn't really think was going to be my taste at all. And I do think like Rocannon's World was really like kind of like sci-fi Lord of the Rings. Kind of. I didn't like it at all. So I think I would definitely enjoy Daughter of the Blood more than that. So that's where we're going to prioritize that. Then the next book that I'm going to try for this video is Empire of the Vampire by J. Kristoff. So I read the Nevernight series by J. Kristoff, really enjoyed it. I haven't picked up this trilogy. I think the third book is either just come out or coming out soon. So it would be a good time to pick it up. But just the general badass vampire vibes of this don't really appeal to me. However, so many people rave about this series, and I did like his other work. So I feel tempted. I at least want to try it. So my understanding of this series is it's a trilogy. It's about this guy who was a silver saint who I think are these like vampire assassins, but now there's only one Silver Saint left and vampires have like taken over, and I think the vampires have like captured him and are forcing him to tell them his story. I could have that completely wrong. So I will try the first chapter and let you know. Okay, so I read the first chapter of this. Oh, I just remembered I forgot to try the audiobook. I'm going to do this update anyway, but I will maybe try it after this. I think I would probably still choose to read it physically just because the thing is, I was very surprised by how much I like the writing style. I thought it was just really easy to read and absorb it. The characters just kind of come off the page. The writing is like, I don't know, just nice to read. And I feel like with an audiobook that would kind of fly past you too quick, whereas reading it physically, you can kind of soak it in more. I don't know if that makes sense. Although I'm sure the audiobook is good for this too, but I think I'm going to read it physically. And also I think I'm going to probably prioritize this pretty high because I really enjoyed it. I wasn't expecting to. I just didn't think vampires were going to be the vibe for me, but I think I like it. So basically, we have this world where vampires have taken over the whole world pretty much now, and there was these silver saints kind of fighting the vampires off, but now there's just one silver saint left. He has been captured by vampires, and the vampires have like sent their chronicler, like, we want to record our history, so we want to know your story and write it down. But also, the silver saint guy is addicted to like smoking vampire blood, so they're basically using that as like a lure to get him to tell his story. So we haven't got much of his story yet. One thing I do know about these books is there are a bunch of pictures. I was just looking at it and now I've lost it. There are a bunch of pictures, and it makes sense because the chronicler guy is also like drawing pictures all the time. And there was a mention of the fact that vampires can't see themselves in mirrors. So it kind of makes sense that they would draw a lot of pictures because that's the only way you can ever see your own image is in a picture. So haven't had much yet, but I do like the world building as well. So in terms of priority for this video, the writing was well above the Black Jewel trilogy or Daughter of the Blood. So I'm definitely going to put it above that. And then in terms of my bigger priority, I'm actually going to put it in my top priority section. I was surprised, but when I went through it, that looked like the right place to put it. I'm actually now pretty excited about reading this. And given that the third book in the trilogy is just coming out soon, this is the perfect time to do it. So it kind of is top priority. In my top priority, I'm going to put it between On the Edge and Annihilation. I've actually already read the On the Edge what is that series called? I've forgotten. I've already read that series. I always love Ilona Andrews. I love their world building. I love their ideas. I love their characters. I love their writing style. So, like, I think that still stays above Empire of the Vampire. But even though I think some of the books under that had better ideas or like more unique concepts, I still think the fact that this writing was so much better still means that I'm more excited to read Empire of the Vampire. And it still did seem like there were going to be some cool ideas in this. So that's where I'm going to put it. Okay, then the next series that I'm going to try the first book of is the Tamír Triad. And the first book is called The Bone Doll's Twin. So this one, I think the deal is that it's some kind of thing where this older brother, half-brother, takes the throne from his younger half-sister. And then the half-sister's child, it's some kind of like twisted gender thing where the daughter is given male form in order to protect them. I don't really know, but I have seen quite a few people say they love this. The average rating of the first book at least is 4.07, so that's not too bad. I guess I'll try the first chapter and we'll see how it goes. Okay, so I've read the first chapter of The Bone Doll's Twin. I will say there is an audiobook, not available in New Zealand, so I have not listened to it. But I have read the kind of like a prologue-y bit and then the first chapter. The prologue I actually really liked. We're getting the perspective of this old man and he's talking about how great everything is now, how in the past a lot of magic users had a really hard life and now they're able to use their powers and help make everything really great. But right at the end of that prologue, he talks about how all this greatness kind of came from, I don't know, it's hinting that an infant was killed, but it could also be something else. I think it didn't word it specifically, but it talked about the cry of an infant. Then we get into the first chapter and we go back in time to this. So this wizard from the prologue, basically his mentor, and he's now a young apprentice wizard to this other witchy lady. And she's like the guardian of some kind of bowl, but she doesn't know what it is or why she's guarding it just because of the way that her mentor died. And also, in the kingdom they're living in, there's like some kind of prophecy where the situation is that as long as a woman from this particular family line is on the throne, then the kingdom will thrive. But like there was one time in the past where the son took the throne and there were plagues until his sister took over. And then now in the current times, the current queen died and the next daughter was really young. So instead this prince has taken over and everyone's like, well, he was pretty much running things anyway, so it should be fine. But since the queen died, it has not been that great. There's been a lot of plagues. And also this witch that we're following, her patron has just married the daughter of the old queen and she's pregnant. So I feel like that's where we're going to lead to something happening with this family line. I think it has to be the daughter of the daughter that gets back on the throne to fix things. Anyway, it was a very interesting setup. Some of the writing did feel like a little bit older fantasy, a little bit, I don't know what it is. I think it's just a lot of things told to you but not explained, and they don't really feel like they add anything to the plot. Anyway, regardless, I like the setup. I was interested. The writing was okay. So I think in terms of priority for this video, I'm going to put it in between these two. Like I liked it better than this Anne Bishop series, but I didn't like the writing or even the setup as much as Empire of the Vampire. So it's going to go in the middle there. Then in terms of the bigger priority, I tried to remember it, but my memory is not that good. Okay, in terms of the bigger priority, I am going to put it on my want to read list, and I'm going to put it above Priestess of White, the Trudy Canavan one I think I read in my last video. I just think the writing was actually kind of similar, but a little bit better, and the setup was better. But then above that, I have Ithaca by Claire North, and that, I don't know, I was just much more intrigued by that, and I have more of a history with liking Claire North stuff. So that's where I'm going to put it. The next series that I'm going to try is, I also just looked this up and immediately forgotten. I think it's the Of Blood and Bone trilogy, and I think that this trilogy continues on from The Faithful and the Fallen. Now, I did try to read that series this year, and I DNF'd it after attempting to read it multiple times. So that's not great. But I decided, a lot of people talk about John Gwynne's writing really improving. Do I believe that that's going to be true for me? Honestly, not really. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try the first chapter of this second series. I think it's a trilogy. The first one was a quartet, then this one's a trilogy. The first book is called A Time of Dread. I don't know if I'm going to like this, but I'm going to give it a go. This is some kind of like Norse mythology inspired fantasy where there's battles between the gods that the humans are all involved in. People who love that initial series really love it. But I found it really boring and badly written. So I'm hoping that means that if I still think that about the second trilogy, I should be able to tell pretty quickly that that's how I'm feeling. So I guess we'll see. Okay, so I tried the first chapter of A Time of Dread, and to be honest, I just don't think it's for me. Maybe the writing is slightly better. Oh, I've just remembered I didn't try the audiobook again, but also at this point, I don't think it matters because I just don't think I'm going to pick this up. I will say, I had kind of heard that you could read this series separately, and on Goodreads, it's like set up completely separately. So I had kind of heard you could read this separately. However, immediately, massive spoilers for the first quartet. And from what I've heard about people who've enjoyed that original series, I think it spoils things that are part of what people love about that original series. So I don't think you could read these series in any order at all. So if you've also heard that, I doubt it. But also a very similar character introduced in the beginning, like a young boy, wannabe warrior type. There was more kind of fantastical elements set up right from the beginning. We have basically this young boy's part of the royal family and they've gone off to this battle, and then they come across these like bear people and also these other flying people. And I mean, now he's going to go off with those people and learn something about them, which from a fantasy point of view is slightly more interesting, but honestly, not that interesting. And I still find the writing a little bit clunky. And if you love this series or John Gwynne's writing in general, I guess you'll totally disagree with me, but that's how I feel about it. I just don't think that these books are that well written. I don't think there's much world building. I don't think the characters are unique or interesting in any way. I don't know. I think this is a somewhat unpopular opinion, but since I didn't like the first series, I gave up on that, and this doesn't seem to be markedly different. I'm not going to read this. So if we're putting this in priority for this video, I'm going to make a graphic instead of holding up the books because I don't have most of the books for this video. I'm going to put this last, obviously, because it's the least likely that I'm going to read this. And for the Anne Bishop series, the Black Jewel trilogy, I think even though I didn't necessarily love the writing as that, and I almost think A Time of Dread, the writing was a little bit better, but the world building and the setup was much more interesting for the Black Jewels trilogy. And as well, like the characters felt much more real and more well developed. And like their dialogue was interesting and the scene setup was interesting. This just didn't have any of that. So at the bottom for this video, and then in the bigger priority, I thought about putting it in the maybe list just because in terms of quality, I think maybe that's where it belongs. However, this is my priority. So for me, it has to be probably not for me because I'm just not gonna read it. So in the probably not for me section, I'm gonna put it under Heirs of Power because I did think the writing and the setup was more interesting than Seven Devils. I just had no interest in the whole tone of the Seven Devils. But the Heirs of Power had some interesting concepts. So even though maybe the writing wasn't quite as good because it is self-published, I'm willing to like let that slide a little bit more. And as I said, the concept for that book was definitely much more interesting than A Time of Dread. So that's where I'm going to put it. So then the next series that I'm going to try is The Bound and the Broken by Ryan Cahill. So I think this is another self-published series. I also think 4 books have been published so far, and there's another 5th one announced. I don't know how long the series is planned to be. I think all I know about the series is I think it has dragons. So I guess I'll try the first chapter and we'll see what we think. Okay, so I tried the first chapter of Blood and Fire by Ryan Cahill. Honestly, very similar to the John Gwynne books in terms of the way that they're written. I think also there is like a little bit of Norse mythology inspiration there. And also, once we got past the prologue, the first chapter is about a young wannabe warrior type guy. Or in this one, he's off hunting. And the writing, I think the writing is slightly better, but nothing in that first chapter was really very interesting. The prologue was slightly interesting in that we have some kind of magical, I forget what the word was that they used to describe them. The knights have been restored. So there's basically this group of knights where they needed one more, and they've saved this guy, given that he will promise to be one of these knights. Honestly, like, almost interesting, but not really, compared to, only interesting relative to the first chapter. In general, that prologue in that first chapter didn't really set up much of anything to pull me in, and the writing wasn't anything particularly special either. It was fine, and there definitely is the promise of dragons in this series, although that's based on hearsay, so I don't know. Did I read the synopsis? Did it mention dragons? I don't know. Anyway, the thing is, the first chapter didn't pull me in, and it did really remind me of John Gwynne's writing, which I've put on Not For Me, right? I think as well, maybe I would also compare it to Eragon, maybe, but that's the dragon element. Definitely, if you like John Gwynne or Eragon, you should try this series out. It is great to support self-published authors, which I think this is. Oh, also, it's on Kindle Unlimited, this. And I did try the audiobook, and that's on the Audible Plus library. I have mixed feelings about supporting Audible and Kindle, but anyway, let's not get into that right now. The thing is, this book could be easy for you to access if you have those services, and if you like John Gwynne or Eragon, probably give it a go. But for me, I don't like either of those, so probably not. But I also think that's not really fair, so I'm not going to put it on the Not For Me section. I'm going to put it, well, actually, let's do the priority for this video. I'm going to put it above In a Time of Dread, but I'm going to put it under the Black Jewel trilogy or Daughter of the Blood, just because Daughter of the Blood had a more interesting setup and the banter was much better. I think Of Blood and Fire attempted banter, didn't quite pull it off. I felt like it was trying a little bit too hard. I could see it was very transparent how it was trying to set up the characters. So I'm going to put Of Blood and Fire under that, but I am still going to put it obviously above A Time of Dread. Then, in terms of the bigger priority, I'm going to put it on the maybe list. I've decided, why not? Obviously, I'm going to still put it under Daughter of the Blood, but I am going to put it above Vorkanen's World because I just really hated the writing of Vorkanen's World, and the setup wasn't that interesting either, so definitely better than that. And I don't know. This is one where I might read it if people convince me. By the time I've finished every other series that I'm interested in, if by then I've heard people loving this series, I could be convinced, maybe, although maybe I shouldn't be. Anyway, next we're going to move on to urban fantasy, which is a little bit of a concern. I think with urban fantasy it's really hard because for me, I need to really like the world building and the tone of the writing and the characters, and then mostly I think this is kind of paranormal romance, actually. And in that case, I really need to like the romance, and I have very limited specific tastes in romance. So we'll see. Also, so the one I'm going to try is called Skinwalker, which is the first book in the Jane Yellowrock series. Now, if I like this, it would be great because it is a 15-book series. But I don't know. I was a little bit concerned because the main character is Native American, and they're a skinwalker, as the title suggests, but the author is just white. So I was just looking up to see if there was any indication online about the representation there, and I couldn't actually find anything, but I did find a lot of other criticisms of the series. So we'll see. I'm going to ignore, of course, all those criticisms. I'm just going to look for my own taste, but I am fussy about paranormal romance, urban fantasy, so we'll see. Okay, so I tried the first chapter of Skinwalker, and it was actually kind of fun. The writing style is still kind of lighthearted, has some nice humor and snark to it, and the world still felt somewhat generic urban fantasy world, but it was okay. And also, I think maybe we already met the love interest, which is too fast for me, although it was just a random guy on the street. We didn't really meet him. It could be not him. Anyway. I also did try the audiobook, and actually I think this could be okay for audiobook. The narrator did an okay job, and it's the kind of fun, lighthearted story which can work quite well for audiobook, and as well if it's a 15-book series, that would be the best way for me to get through this. So I think if I pick it up, I'll read it that way. I will admit, right at the beginning, she takes a cross, a stake, and a small gun and hides them in her braids, and I just can't comprehend how that's working. She's like, I patted down the hair so you couldn't see a bulge, but I just can't see those things fitting. And even if they could, like without being obvious, there's also a part where she pulls out the cross and palms it without anyone noticing. And all I could think is there's no way you're pulling that out without it somehow messing up your hair and being obvious that something's happened. Right? So if that's going to be like an ongoing gimmick that she hides things in her hair, that's going to really take me out of the story constantly. But I can also say, so there's a bit of a mystery. She doesn't remember the first 12 years of her life, doesn't really know anything about her family heritage or anything like that. And I expect that some of that will come out throughout the bigger series. It does seem like the focus of this is going to be killing a vampire. She's basically taken a job to kill a vampire, and so far from everything I've seen, it seems like very generic vampires, which aren't usually my favorite kind of urban fantasy thing. I only really like vampires like in the Kate Daniels series, which is one of my favorite like urban fantasy paranormal romance series. The vampires are very unique, whereas this seemed more generic. So like, it could go either way with this series, but it seemed like it could be a fun read. So for that reason, I'm still going to put it somewhat high in the priority. So for this video, I debated with myself whether I should put it above the Bone Dolls twin or not, because I do think the Bone Dolls twin seemed like a more interesting setup, but I just think Skinwalker will be a much easier read and much more fun. So I don't know, I'm still second guessing myself, but I think I'm going to put it above the Bone Dolls twin, but not above Empire of the Vampire, because that was just much more interesting and much better written. Then, in terms of the bigger priority, I was thinking to put it in my want to read section. However, that already has 12 books in it. And my rule is basically that when a section gets to 12 books, mainly for screen convenience, I split the category. Although I'm getting far too many categories now, but we're nearly at the end, so I guess it's okay. So I'm going to split want to read into want to read and good to read. I'm really struggling with the names at this point, but basically good to read will be in between want to read and will read, and it's kind of like, I can't explain this, but that's what I've decided to call it. So these are the books I've put in the good to read category, but I'm actually going to put Skinwalker in the want to read category still. So in the top half of the split that I've just made, whatever, it's too complicated. This is what I do. I overcomplicate things. But anyway, and what I'm going to do is put it just above the Bone Dolls twin. I'm not going to argue putting it any higher than that, because I think the ones above it are still ones that I'm much more interested in or that I want to read more. Whereas Skinwalker to me just seems like it will be like a fun book when I feel like something like that. Okay, so then the next series I'm going to try is another urban fantasy paranormal romance. Still, I have the same concerns. In fact, I have slightly more concerns for this one. So it's the Jacky Leon series. This is another one where I think the series is quite long. So if I did like it, it would be good. 12 books so far. Oh, actually, book 12 isn't out yet. So an ongoing series. The first book is called Oathsworn. Honestly, I'm not a fan of this like Sims like book cover style, but I also think maybe this is self-published. So we're trying not to judge these books by their covers. I think the main character in this is a werecat, and I assume some kind of drama ensues that she has to do something. Actually, I think there's some kind of drama with like a werewolf pack. I don't know. But again, it could be fun, so we're going to give it a go. So I tried the first chapter of Oathsworn, and I don't know if it's for me. I didn't really like the audiobook narrator or the actual writing style. I think for me, I like urban fantasy or paranormal romance that has a fair amount of humor, like where the characters are just a little bit snarky and don't take themselves too seriously. And I also like it where I can feel the depth of the world building. So with Oathsworn, the first chapter just didn't really give me anything. I'm introduced to our main character who owns a bar, and she's a werecat. It's in a world, though, where werewolves are, like, out in the open, and there's some kind of werewolf war just happening in the neighborhood, and she's like, how embarrassing for them to, like, have that out in public. And then everyone's kind of guessing, oh, are you a werewolf? Because you always close when there's a full moon. And she's like, well, whatever, everyone closes on a full moon because it's too dangerous to be doing business. But actually, she's a werecat. The first chapter is basically just the scene of her working in a bar, everyone saying, are you a werewolf? No, I'm not. And then a bunch of mucking around, a lot of info dumping about werecats and werewolves, and nothing really happened. I think if I was to compare this to the Jane Yellowrock one that I read just before, like the first chapter, we had some significant things happening. We had action, we had world building, it really felt like the story was being set up, whereas in Oathsworn, all I'm getting is introduced to the character and a tiny bit of the world, but it didn't feel like there was a lot of depth there. So maybe it gets better. But if I'm just basing this on the first chapter, which is meant to be the point of this project, I will have to put this quite low. Now, in terms of this video, I am debating with myself whether I should put it right at the bottom or whether I should put it above the Ryan Cahill and the John Gwynne ones. It's interesting that I can never remember the names of those ones, isn't it? Should I put it above those? To be honest, I probably am not that interested in any of them. So that makes it hard to decide, like, they're all kind of meh. So what's my priority? Although, I think in those other two books, things did happen in the first chapter. So because nothing happened in Oathsworn's first chapter, I think I'm going to have to put it at the bottom. Which means that in the bigger priority, I'm going to be putting it in the probably not for me section. And I guess I'll still just put it under A Time of Dread. I'll still put it above Seven Devils because I just really didn't like Seven Devils. Everything about it wasn't for me. Even though I could see some people could like it. And I guess that's where we say, one, I'm only trying the first chapter, but two, different people have different tastes, but this is where it's going to go for me. So next, what I'm going to be trying is the first chapter of City of the Plague God by Sarwat Chadda. I probably am pronouncing that wrong. So this is the first book from a series called The Adventures of Aziz. Again, pronunciation could be wrong. I think so far there's 2 books in this series. I wasn't clear if that's it or there are going to be more. This is one of the books under Rick Riordan Presents. So I think it is a YA novel, which, isn't something I would necessarily love, but I think this was recommended to me when I was asking for books that have some kind of Egyptian mythology in them. And I do like the Percy Jackson books, so I don't know really what this will be like, but I thought I would try it, so let's do it. Okay, so I've tried the first chapter of City of the Plague God. I will say, I can only get this via audiobook, which was a little bit surprising. Is it perhaps the usual thing for books for young adults to not be available on ebook? Because this is like a more modern book, so I would have expected there to be an ebook, but there doesn't seem to be. Maybe it's a region thing. Maybe there is, but not in New Zealand for some ridiculous reason. Anyway, I can get the audiobook. I tried the audiobook sample, which is only the first 5 minutes. It was all just the introduction by Rick Riordan, so that's not that helpful. But my library actually has the audiobook, so I was able to listen to the first chapter properly, and I didn't mind it. It seems like it's going to be fun. It feels very similar in tone to the Percy Jackson books. We've got a young 13-year-old boy. His brother had gone back to Iraq and died, and so now he's kind of trying to help out with the family business and like keep the family going. I will say the introduction by Rick Riordan said basically that this is going to involve a plague in New York City, and also talking about the fact that this book was completely written before COVID-19, and it was just like around COVID-19 that they were wanting to publish it, and they were like, oh, this has turned out to be a lot more relevant than we were expecting. Anyway, the first chapter actually didn't give me that much, though. It was really just an introduction to the character. And then they were hearing someone talk outside, and it seemed like they were eating rats, and he was like, that's strange. And I assumed that that's going to be some kind of mythological thing going on outside. The thing is, the voices that the audiobook narrator did were very silly-ish, and I assume that's because we're targeting a younger audience, and this is where me not being that target audience becomes a problem. So I don't know if I will love this, but I think it could still be fun. And it definitely is well written. So if I'm putting it in the priority order, for this video, I'm going to put it above Daughter of the Blood, just because it seemed like it could be more fun and easy to read. And I'm probably more interested in the mythology of the story than I am in whatever's going on in Daughter of the Blood. But I still think the concept of the Bone Doll's twin is more interesting, so we won't put it above that. Then, in the bigger priority, that actually gives me quite a big gap to place it in. But I do think I'm still only going to put it in the maybe section. Maybe if it had done more in the first chapter, I would put it higher, but I don't think I'm going to. And I'm only just going to put it above Written in Red, I think probably for the same argument as I was making for Daughter of the Blood. But I'm not going to put it above Spinner, because even though I think it's better written than Spinner had like a more interesting kind of potentially twisted concept, like still a YA dystopian kind of novel, but I think the concept could be cooler and it could be darker, so I'm not going to put it above Spinner. So then I'm up to trying the last series of this video, and that is Dorothy Must Die by Danielle Page. This was recommended to me when I was reading the Wicked series. So basically it's like another Oz retelling, except I think in this one there's like another girl from Kansas being taken to Oz and her job is to kill Dorothy. I don't really know. It could be fun. I'm not sure, but I guess we'll try it and we'll see. Okay, so I tried Dorothy Must Die, and it reads very much like a YA contemporary with like a lot of drama, a fair amount of girl hate, which I'm not really into. Like, honestly, nothing from the first chapter really appealed to me. It's mainly about this teenage girl, and when she was younger, this other girl said, don't go to her birthday, she just lives in the trash family. And so no one went to her birthday because she lives in like a, what's it called, like a trailer, like a camper van thing. I've forgotten totally the word that Americans use for it, and I can't think of, like, do we even really have that concept in New Zealand? Not really. Anyway, basically nobody at high school likes her for no real good reason, just because they think she's poor, and her mother is some kind of like alcoholic drug user, makes her life difficult. But then this main girl, like the cool girl at school, is like pregnant but still being like the super popular cool girl, and I don't know, it's just really weird. They end up kind of having a fight in the school hallway. Like, the pregnant girl kind of starts it. I don't know, the whole thing was just like, what is happening? But there's like hints of, oh, a tornado is coming, and of course, no doubt she's going to end up in Oz. I do think I have the synopsis slightly wrong. I think Dorothy still might be somewhat of a historical figure, but I think that is going to influence whatever she does when she gets to Oz. I don't know. I didn't really like, I guess it was written fine for a YA contemporary, but I didn't really like the way that it was coming at certain topics. I actually meant to look up what year this was from. It felt like an early 2000s book to me in terms of the way it was dealing with certain themes. 2014. Yeah, we were still probably pretty problematic in 2014. I mean, when are we not? Anyway, I don't know. I'm still very tempted by the promise of more Oz and like an Oz retelling and what might happen with the mythology. And of course, the first chapter didn't get into that at all, but I'm still interested, but not really based on the first chapter. The first chapter definitely brought it down in my interest. So if I'm putting it in priority order for this video, I'm going to put it underneath Daughter of the Blood because the writing just wasn't as good. It wasn't really a genre I enjoy. Like, even though I had problems with Daughter of the Blood, I think I would enjoy that more based on the first chapter than Dorothy Must Die. Just the general tone of things and the characters. Well, like the characters in Daughter of the Blood seem much more like characters I could get along with. But I am still going to put it above the Ryan Cahill and John Gwynne ones. I'm grouping those together in my head because they just felt so similar to me. And they just felt like not my thing at all either. But at least Dorothy Must Die has the promise of a cool concept. So I'm going to put it above those. Then, in the bigger priority, I think that means I don't actually have much choice. I'm going to put it in the maybe section. And obviously, I'm going to put it between Daughter of the Blood and Of Blood and Fire because that's where I just put it in my other priority list. So if I look at all the series I tried for this video, I feel a little bit bad because it's really only the top 3 that have ended up in my want to read or higher. The rest were either like maybe or like not for me. But I guess if you think that most of the other books I put in my big priority list are ones that I chose that I knew I was already interested in for some reason. And like, I know my taste the best. So it shouldn't be that surprising that other people's suggestions would in general not end up as high, but I still feel bad about it. But I think still it's better to have some idea of where they stack up before I go into them. I don't know. I feel kind of bad about it, but also that's just what it is. And I definitely still think some of these recommendations were really good, even if they are only on my maybe section. And let me reiterate once again, everyone has different tastes if you love these books. And like, I honestly think some of the ones I'm saying are not for me. Other people would love them, 5 stars. It's just different people have different tastes and it's fine. It's fine. I will say I'm very surprised that the top 2 books on this list are vampire-based books. I didn't really think I liked vampire books, but this list would make you think differently, wouldn't it? I guess we'll see when I get to Empire of the Vampire, which I will try to prioritize. At this point, we're getting near the end of the year. I think I've got one more Triad chapter video that I want to do, one more group of books, and then I'm going to look at my priority list and work out some kind of actual realistic plan to get to some of the top priority ones in the next year, and how many can I really get through. So I guess it'll probably be another month or so until I put up that last video for this project. And then maybe I'll also do some more videos looking at these priority lists and the ones I've already read and working out, is trying the first chapter even a valid way of prioritizing books? Maybe, maybe not. Anyway, let me know if you have read any of the books I talked about in this video. I'd love to know your thoughts about them down in the comments. Maybe you can even argue them up in my priority or down. I guess that's also valid. And of course, even though I prioritized a lot of these lower, if you think there are any book series you know about that you think I would love, do recommend them to me down in the comments. I do appreciate every recommendation, even if I don't end up liking the books. Also, do subscribe if you'd like to see more of my bookish videos. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.